Today, I am joined by comedian, model, and podcaster Mario Adrion, who is currently captivating listeners with his high energy podcast, Uncensored. Mario's modeling and comedy have gained him legions of fans, and Mario is here to chat to me today about his career and upcoming projects. So, thank you so much for taking the time. I know you're a busy guy.
Yeah. No, thanks for having me. It's great.
So, let's jump back to kind of your life, you're growing up in Germany. Um, What was that like? What was the experience of kind of living in Germany like, and how long were you there?
Yes, I grew up in a small town in Germany, in the Black Forest region. It's a town of 800 people. It's called Alpirsbach im Hochschwarzwald.
Wow.
Exactly, exactly. So growing up there was like, I come from a family of like a long lineage of lumberjacks. So
Okay.
it's like the furthest you can be from the
Yeah.
entertainment industry. But then I think all the lumberjacking and chopping down trees, I was in quite good shape. So when I was 15 years old, I started posting some photos on Facebook, which is like one shirtless photo I posted.
Yeah.
And then I was scouted by a modeling scout in New York. And he just said, "Hey, Mario, you should come to New York and be a model." And at that time, I just loved traveling and just loved embracing new opportunities.
Yeah.
So without knowing him or anybody, which was a kind of like a naive decision.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
risky.
Exactly. No, it turned out fine, but it's definitely risky. And he also said that I could stay at his place. It was like a whole thing. It was a little weird, but it turned out to be fine to where he introduced me to a bunch of people in the fashion world. I took some of my first photos there, and I got introduced to my first modeling agency in New York. And from then on, basically, my life changed 180. I went from studying to become an engineer in Germany, living the traditional German
Mission.
engineering lifestyle.
Yeah.
Exactly. To then moving to New York, going from 800 people to like, millions of people.
Yeah.
Um, and then, yeah, traveled the world, lived in Asia, London, um, Milan, everywhere for modeling and loved the experience and traveling. Yeah.
And going back to that kind of initial moment of that scout reaching out to you online, what were your family's reactions? Were they like, don't do this? Did you tell them? Did you just go for it?
Yeah, no, I told, but like, I, I've always been very independent. That's the thing I think about Germany, maybe Europe in general, maybe Germany specifically. Kids in Germany, we're more independent. I feel like we're not as sheltered or protected by our parents.
Yeah.
We just explore on our own. Like I traveled when I was 13 years old, did like a student exchange program for 3 months without my family in France,
Yeah.
and then I went to South America to Peru when I was 15 for a year. So I had been traveling a lot and I'd been doing my own thing.
Yeah.
So my mom was just like, it's your money, it's your decision, and I like her for it. I mean, she's not the most like warm mom. German moms are a little rougher, but
Just
she
the
really
stereotype. Yeah.
yeah, but she really just trusted me to make the right decision and to be able to, make my own, um, yeah, decisions and just trusted me. So I respect that.
And you know what? It all works out for the best.
It did. I mean, I'm not to say that there were some weird moments in the fashion industry, and I
Yeah.
talk about this publicly in my podcast. There's been a lot of like sexual harassment, especially that I've experienced in the modeling world. But at the end of the day, it's like, yeah, I still am grateful for the experience. I learned so much, um, from those experiences, even. Yeah.
So, it's a recurring thing. A lot of comedians and people that work in the sort of entertainment industry have experienced the trauma, which they can sort of convert into their art. Um,
Yeah.
is that a tough process, or is that something that's like a kind of coping mechanism?
It's a little bit of both because on the one hand it's very empowering to be able to make people laugh or to tell a story that about something horrible that happened.
Yeah.
Like I have a bit in my stand-up now where I actually talk about my experiences of being harassed or assaulted as a model, and it's a tough thing to talk about,
Yeah.
but at the same time there's a lot of people who it raises awareness, and a lot of people, especially men, feel encouraged to also talk about their feelings, or because a lot of men feel that they can't talk about it. So even though it is hard sometimes, the connection that comes out of it and the awareness
Yeah.
is beautiful. It's empowering that I can now turn this like horrible thing that happened into art,
Yeah.
right? It's almost like you're taking the power back. It justifies it too, because now it creates something good from something initially that was painful, right? So it's a beautiful process where you can actually turn something bad into art and therefore make it into something positive. Yeah.
And I think to be on stage and to be unveiling that to an audience must be quite, in some senses, cathartic, but in some senses quite, nerve-wracking because, you're kind of bearing your soul up there. Um,
Yeah.
yeah,
It's safer to be silly and just do like silly comedy things and
yeah,
observational comedy. It's a lot safer, but it's also not as rewarding.
yeah,
Like when I first told the story about the assault, and it's a thin line because people are worried about you, so you got to walk the line as a comedian to make sure people don't feel bad for you.
yeah,
So it still has to be empowering in some way, but when you break the tension, it is so satisfying, much more rewarding than doing some low risk. It's like high risk, high reward, right?
yeah,
It's more
yeah,
way more rewarding than doing some, you know, talk about dating apps or something less vulnerable. Yeah.
yeah. I know you've obviously spoken about your experiences on your podcast, and the podcast is great. It's obviously you are talking about serious issues, but it's also quite light-hearted also.
Yeah.
That's it's a kind of good blend to kind of catch. What was the decision behind starting the podcast?
I just loved being raw. I felt like I started YouTube. So when I was still modeling, I started a YouTube channel, which I love to just express myself. And I always love being silly. But I feel like on YouTube, often the videos are very highly produced, highly edited. So I love the podcast where I can just be very raw
Yeah,
and uncensored. That's why I called it Uncensored too. Yeah, and I love that blend because that's pretty much me. I love being like sometimes deeper and serious, but also I love being silly. Like that's one thing that was very important to me as a model was to break the stereotype of what it's like to be a model because people
yeah,
think as a model you can only be this serious like douchebag blue
yeah.
steel model. But I love being silly and just making fun the priority. It's been part of it, so that's also the vibe on my podcast. Yeah.
I would love to know. I was listening to it the other day and I was thinking, how much of this gets cut? Is it pretty much, from start to finish? Is it sent out, or do you trim quite a lot? Is there a lot that you think actually can't say that?
No, it's the podcast is it's unless
Uncensored.
somebody says some very unless they go really into detail about something very sexual or graphic, because then YouTube will age restrict the video or
Yeah,
demonetize it, which it happens even with cutting it. But no, I mean the conversation I would say 95% are fully
yeah,
that's what it is, right? We don't cut anything unless sometimes a guest will say, "Oh, we can't." Sometimes a guest will talk about. There was one guest who talked about a specific name, and their agent said, "Oh, I shouldn't mention the name, so we just blur that or something like that." But yeah, in general, it's super uncensored and uncut. That's the whole purpose. Also, I'm very tired of editing. I'm editing so much, and doing some writing comedy. I'm editing, so like I love the podcast where I can just like film it and then have it very raw and just put it out.
yeah.
Yeah,
I know what it's like when you're doing an interview and a phone goes and you're like, oh, great.
yeah, yeah,
But
exactly.
let's talk about your dream guest for the podcast. Who would you love to kind of sit down one to one with and chat with?
That's good. So I think I've talked to a lot of people in like the fashion modeling industry because I can relate to them, and it's always my audience enjoy that. So there's like some people like Shauna Pry, for example, who's like one of the most famous male models. He's fun. David Gandy, and in the comedy world, I mean, I'd love to have Matt Rife because I feel like he's kind of like the blend of a comedian that's also like a model type guy. And Beyonce, you know.
Nice. Yeah. I mean,
I
you
just want
stuck
to throw
Beyonce
that
in
out
there.
there.
You got
Also,
manifest.
Mateo Lane, realistically, he's like a guy I would like to, and I'm working on getting him on. He's
Yeah.
also a comedian, great guy. Love him. He's Italian. He's a gay guy. I love his perspectives, and yeah,
Yeah,
love to have
he's
him on.
he's he's got
Yeah,
really great observational comedy. Yeah.
yeah, he's great. He's great. Yeah, can relate to his
So
stuff.
the podcast as well, you talk about a lot about kind of male relationships and kind of male intimacy, but not always in a kind of sexual sense. Um, there's a sort of stigma, isn't there, between kind of men showing affection to one another. Do you think that's getting better, or do you think that's something that's kind of just stuck since it was kind of from a long time ago?
Yeah, I think it's definitely getting better. I feel like with especially Gen Z, there's a lot of jokes about Gen Z, how they're a lot more open, they're more fluid. I think it also comes from a fear of being perceived gay, whether you're straight or gay. A lot of straight men, I think they can't be close with their male friends
Yeah,
because they think it's gay. But then at the same time, as men, sometimes we're afraid we can't even be close and vulnerable with our girlfriends because that's also gay somehow. You know what I mean? So like there's this fear of like I think if men just let go of like the labels and what it means, we'd be a lot more happy. I
Yeah.
truly believe that. So I think it is getting better, but some parts of the country, it's still like so stigmatized to be close as men, right? And I think it's something so beautiful that we men are craving, that intimacy and love. And that's why I'm so jealous of women, because they can have the most intimate, beautiful friendships with their girlfriends, and it doesn't have to be sexual, but they can just express their emotions and be close and cuddle and all these things. And I think it'd be healthy for us men if we had a little bit more of that in our lives. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think you probably notice a lot of issues in society would just kind of slowly fall away. Crime, violence, a lot of it will be stemmed in male insecurity and male kind of trauma.
100%. And I think I mean, this may be a little far, but I think if even, like the worst people in history, I think if they had like a best friend they can hug, like I don't know if Putin had like a best friend he can actually talk about his stuff with, then maybe he wouldn't have started a war, who knows? I'm just saying like there's definitely a lot of aggression comes from that. I don't think men are inherently bad. It's sometimes we just are lonely, and you have pain, and that's why we sometimes act like dicks. So
That's what
yeah,
it comes down to, yeah. Well, I
yeah,
mean, if
yeah.
Putin's listening, let's find you a male friend and just give him a hug. Just let
Give
him
them a
know.
hug. Exactly,
Yeah.
exactly.
Let's talk about comedy because stepping out onto that stage for the first time must be horrifying. Is it not terrifying?
Yeah, no, it is, of course, because comedy also it's just you. You don't have you can't hide. There's no editing, because on YouTube I can edit things, I
Yeah.
can add a sound effect. Comedy's raw. And the crowd, you never know how they're gonna. Of course, you have pre-written material, but it was very scary the first time. But when I did my first ever comedy thing, like my first performance, I just told a story and it was very improvised. But the first time I made a room of people laughed, I felt like it was not just making people laugh; it's like connecting with people,
Yeah.
and I felt the connection much stronger than I ever felt the connection um, that I have like by making a YouTube video, because I can have a video that gets like millions of views, but you don't see those people.
Yeah.
But doing a show, even for 25 people in a room, it's this real connection, and it's so satisfying, and it's the most beautiful thing. So from that moment on, even though it was scary, I was like, oh, this is it, because this
Yeah.
is about connection more than anything. Yeah,
Have you had to deal with any hecklers?
absolutely. Yeah. So oddly enough, it's a lot of women.
Okay.
Drunk women is like the main demographic for heckling for sure. A lot of times I don't mind that as much. Like sometimes women will just be drunk and then they're kind of flirting in a way, you know. But then there's also one instance I remember you made a YouTube video about it. We did a show in Miami, and I have a joke about a gay gym because I go to a very gay friendly gym, West Hollywood. So a lot of jokes in there. And then there was one guy in the crowd who just didn't like those jokes, and he yelled out. He was like, "No gay gyms, none of that gay shit, bro." And he just urged me to stop telling any gay stuff, and he was very offended by it, which I found odd because if you get so offended about a joke, then I don't know, there must be some deeper reason for why you get so
Yeah.
offended about that. I didn't this didn't relate to him at all, Um, so that was weird, and then they kept heckling us, and the next comedian on the lineup also had a joke about the gay gym, and then the guy just kept interrupting him to the point where they were at some point kicked out of the club. And then they called the cops on us after the show because then we kind of shut them down, we kind of roasted them. And I made jokes about like how he must be, struggling with his sexuality. We get so offended about a gay gym, blah, blah. And then they said that we were being racist towards them. And there was also a woman that was heckling because also he's a black guy. So he was saying that we were being racist, but it had nothing to do with that. So it's just very weird. And people got very offended in Miami. It's
Yeah.
usually drunk people. But that was also one of my first shows on the road. That was it was an interesting first experience where I was just thrown into a homophobic heckler. Um, yeah,
Do you
that
think
happens.
with the modeling background and also, let's not, I don't want to bring in race and nationality, but do you think the German side of things, a lot of Americans are maybe prejudiced towards that?
I actually think that it can also help me a little bit because I think about this sometimes. If I was just another, no offense to any like American straight white guys, but if I was just another straight white dude in America, it's like it's a little boring and saying the things I talk about. I talk about sexuality and challenging the norms of what it means to be a man, all this stuff.
Yeah.
And I think being European helps me get away with it a little bit because I have a different perspective. It's a little bit more likable because I already look a little bit like a douchebag. and straight guys don't want to like me. But if they're like, oh no, he's not a douche, he's just European, then it kind of I think it helps me. Being foreign helps. I truly believe it helps me. Usually there's, I don't know, being German. Yeah, I think it's something unique that people also find quite funny and helps me get away with a couple more things. Yeah.
Have you tried stand up in Germany? This is a real question.
Yeah, no, no, there is stand up in Germany. A lot of people think Germans don't laugh, but we do sometimes. Um, yeah, so I had some shows lined up, but then I had like a family thing happen, so I never performed in Germany.
Yeah.
No, but I'm planning actually a tour. I'm currently in the process of getting my green card, so I can't leave the country currently, right now. But I'm planning a tour in Europe, um, end of summer. So next year in the summer, I'm planning a tour in, a couple cities like London, Germany, Amsterdam, which I'm very excited for. I'd love to spend more time in Europe because that's where I'm from, and I like spending time there. I currently live in America, but any chance I get to perform or stay in Europe, I'd
Yeah.
love to take that. Yeah.
And I guess with the US, a lot of the comedians on the circuit will be kind of similar names. Whereas when you go to Europe and you're going to different countries, each country's got its own kind of different national comedy scene. So I guess it's getting a flavor of all these different comic identities, I suppose.
Yeah, there's a lot of diversity. Yeah,
Yeah, be interesting.
I love that. Yeah,
Let's jump back to modeling. What is your strangest modeling gig?
Strangest modeling gig. Oh God, I did so many. I mean, the ones that stick out are like all the underwear photo shoots because I've done some pretty sexy underwear stuff where it was even like in public. I did one campaign in Korea for a big underwear brand where I had to walk around basically in public also in my underwear. We're shooting some stuff and it was just so awkward because there was literally all of a sudden there was like hundreds of Koreans that were like taking out their, because I look different, right? There's not as many Western people.
Yeah.
And I was just in my underwear while it's like cold as well. It was like Korea gets very cold in like the winter. I didn't know that. Colder than Germany even. So that was very awkward. And then we did a shoot inside where this girl was basically, we were like, she was basically touching my chest and stuff as I was having underwear on. It was just a lot of that stuff, which is just like super awkward. And I never thought when I grew up in Germany that at some point I'd be in Korea, being in my underwear in front of like in the winter, in the cold, in front of like hundreds of people. So yeah, that one definitely stands out. Then I did a thing for Lady Gaga in Stephen Klein, New York, where I was wearing fishnets, a black leather Speedo. My hair was slicked back, and we had AK-47s, like actual guns. I mean, they were not loaded. And we were doing a thing for like a Lady Gaga music video with a bunch of male models. It's just like so weird and so like
Yeah.
out there and artsy. But yeah, again, if my German grandma saw this, she'd be like, "What is happening? Yeah, what has he done?" But yeah,
Yeah, you're
it's
working
fun.
in engineering in the US. Just go with that. Uh,
Exactly. I'm an engineer. Yeah,
don't upset grandma.
yeah,
Um,
yeah.
you have also flirted with the world of music. A couple of singles out there, a couple of comedy singles. Would you label yourself a musician?
100% not. I think it would be an insult for any musicians to call myself one. No, I don't know. I have some talents, but music is definitely not one of them. Never in school in Germany, I was always the guy. I would play the triangle,
Yeah.
and it was my job to just hit the triangle at the end. And sometimes I would even miss that. So not very musically inclined, but I love comedy, so I've done um, some comedy singles and
Yeah.
comedy songs. But well, it was driven more by my comedic aspirations than by my music.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I did this thing on American Idol where I did a catwalk with Katy Perry in a Speedo. So that moment was quite iconic, and I love that moment. And I had to sing, so I did write a song
Yeah.
for the purpose of performing on American Idol. And that went not so great in terms of the music, but the comedy was great and I had a great time. But yeah, no, music is, I loved it. I had fun. Just any aspect of comedy, like a parody music video.
Yeah.
It's just fun. I love being silly.
And
Yeah.
how does that work with the American Idol situation? Do they see your content online and give you a call and say, we'd love you to kind of come and audition? Or how did that work for you?
Yes, I did a comedy show and I met a friend of mine now, who's one of my good friends. He's casting for American Idol and he said, "Hey man, you're so funny. I like your stuff, your perspective with the modeling, the European thing. You should come audition for American Idol." So I did, and it was on Zoom. It was back during the pandemic, so I did a bunch of Zoom calls, and yeah, I just showed up in a speedo on Zoom, and they loved it. And I did a bunch of, I mean, it was like a long process, right? I did so many Zoom calls with producers, and then I was invited to audition in front of Katy Perry, and
You
so
don't
fun,
know to
so
that.
fun.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Let's wrap up with a little kind of game. So I want you to choose whether this thing is better in Germany or the US.
Okay, let's go.
So let's start. Let's go festive Christmas.
I would say Germany, 100%. I'm biased because I grew up there,
Yeah.
but it's just the Christmas markets.
Yeah.
There's the Glühwein and all the traditional German Christmas market. It's just something so wonderful, and I haven't seen it here. I feel like in America, everything's a bit more commercialized.
Yeah.
So what I associate with Christmas here is just, a lot of purchases, a lot of that. In Germany, it's just a bit more traditional, and I love that. It's just a great vibe.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Bit mulled wine, some nice baking. Yeah, lovely.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Um, Food in general.
Food. It's hard. I'll go with the U.S. for that one.
Okay.
Just because people trash American food. I'm not talking about like burgers, but just
Yeah.
the diversity of food here. Germany is like we have our food, but it's quite like meat heavy and which I love sometimes. But America, it's like I live in California. There's amazing Mexican food. There's just so much diversity in terms of food.
Yeah.
But I'll say that so I like that the recipes, but the quality of the food, even at the grocery store, much higher in Europe. Like for some reason, even when I eat quite healthy, I don't really eat too much bread because it kind of messes up my digestion. But if I eat bread in Europe, like in Italy or Germany, I don't have any issues.
Yeah.
I think the ingredients and the produce are of higher quality. That's what I feel like. It's just more natural, it seems.
Yeah, I
Um,
feel like
yeah,
regulations and stuff are tighter in Europe than the US,
yeah,
but that may be wrong. Um,
yeah.
Alcohol. Are we thinking German beer or a nice like California Sauvignon Blanc?
I'm the wrong person to ask because I don't drink. Also, I don't even drink beer, and I'm a bad German. And yeah. Fun fact: when you stop drinking beer, they take away your citizenship. So I'm out. I'm out. I'm no longer a real German.
Well,
Um,
you need to kind of fire some more US answers, or they'll be ripping up your green card. Um,
exactly, exactly. No, I love American. I love Tennessee whiskey, Hennessy whiskey. That's what I like. All right, all right, all right. Freedom, freedom.
let's jump onto music. Do we think more kind of David Hasselhoff, Thomas Anders, or are we thinking more Katy Perry? Um, you know, American music.
Can you repeat that one more time? You just cut out for a second.
Um,
So you say the music, yeah.
are you thinking more German music, the Hoff,
Mm.
I guess, or American music?
I'm definitely into German music because I mean, David Hasselhoff is amazing. He's like my idol. Every German loves him.
Yeah.
But especially techno music. I talk about this a lot. I think it's just I grew up with I lived in Berlin. It's just like the hard German techno music, yeah, And I just feel
Industrial.
it's very efficient music. It's very hard. It's very like tang, tang, tang. So I do like that. Most Americans don't like it too much, but there's nothing like it. There's no place like Berlin when it comes to music, in my opinion.
Yeah.
In America, it's just a little too inefficient. It's too slow. It's a lot of rap music, which I'm not too much a fan of. So yeah, I like Germany. It's just a little harder.
Yeah, I'm with you on that.
Yeah.
German fashion or US fashion?
I mean, Germany is not as known for their fashion. I mean, they have Hugo Boss and stuff, but that German fashion I thought about later. I wasn't right away.
Yeah, that's a go-to.
But no, I'll definitely say Germany just because of Speedos. Like if you think about swimwear, Americans wear these like long, like swim short, like the short board shorts. They go over your knees, and I think the European Speedos is way more aerodynamic and way more attractive. So I'll go with that. My dad, even in Germany, I love in the 80s, he was wearing these like short European soccer shorts, and that's kind of like what I wear. I think it's more fun. It just yeah,
Yeah.
Americans don't wear that usually. Yeah.
Romance. German romance, US romance.
Hmm. Well, I think I would say US because Germany, I've had one girlfriend in Germany. It's just everything's a little less emotional, a little more efficient, a little more, rational, everything, and my fiance now, she's very yeah, she's just very romantic. So there's some the romanticism definitely. I think we Germans we focus a lot on work, always working harder,
Yeah.
So there's something America is definitely I think it's all the rom-coms and stuff where they can influence to be a little bit more romantic. Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for chatting. It's been a lot of fun. Is there anything else you want to kind of give a shout out to or kind of tell us about before you head off?
No, just follow me on Instagram, and I have a stand-up tour coming up. I'm planning it right now, so I'm gonna do some dates in the US first, and hopefully in Europe. So it's gonna be on marioadrian.com. Uh, I'm gonna have the dates on the site. Yeah,
Nice. Well, we'll definitely check you out in Europe.
yeah.
Thank you for taking the time. It's been a lot of fun, and keep going with the podcast and all your projects. Lots of exciting stuff going. So thank you for chatting.
Thank you so much. Appreciate you,
Okay.
Andrew.
Bye.
Bye.